That was the sound of my childhood. I think at this point everyone knows who Sega is. I mean, they have created one of the greatest, most well-known, most popular characters of all time in Sonic the Hedgehog, and at one point they were the biggest and most dangerous competitor to Nintendo in the 90s. And the reason Sega has so much popularity today is because of one system, the Sega Genesis. The Sega Genesis put Sega on the map. It introduced games such as Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2, Sonic 3, and Sonic Knuckles. And of course, it was the place to play Mortal Kombat. As many of you probably know, way back in the day, in the first Mortal Kombat game, blood was not allowed on the Super Nintendo. But if you wanted to be edgy, you wanted to be cool, you wanted to be all those things, you, my friend, would have gotten the Sega Genesis and enabled the blood cheat code. It was a console for the cool crowd, and the babies played Mario on the Super Nintendo. Now I know it's a very dramatic story that I just told and very dramatic wording, but because of all those reasons, that's why Sega was so popular back then, and even a little bit now. Sega did almost everything right with the Sega Genesis, minus the add-ons, of course. We won't talk about that today, but most people started off playing Sega Genesis games either on their own Sega Genesis hardware, or maybe even on a Genesis collection on a newer console like a PS3 or Xbox One. I had one of those collections on the Xbox 360, and I'll put up the artwork, the case artwork, so you can know exactly which one it was. But when I was a kid, I would play hours and hours of those Sega Genesis games like Vectorman, Comic Zone, Sonic 1, 2, and 3, because in that collection, 3 and Knuckles were separate. So you had to play all of them different, which is weird, and we'll get into that. But all those games, Altered Beast, E-SWAT, all those amazing games, right? Even though I wasn't born in the 90s to actually play around that time, those games defined me in what I like in terms of video games. So the Sega Genesis is had a place deep in my heart, and I love the console, I loved the library, I loved all those things. And one day on my birthday, I went to the mall, and there was a Dave & Buster's there, and of course I was having fun at Dave & Buster's. My mom took me there. Thanks, Mom, love you. I was just having fun, you know, gathering some tickets, maybe trying to win some prizes, and they had a big room where you could go in and you could count your ticket, how many tickets you had, and you know how much tickets it would be to get certain items. And on one of the shelves, for a very high ticket price, of course, was a portable Sega Genesis player, and on the very front cover it said Mortal Kombat and Sonic, and of course the Sega Genesis logo. And I immediately just ran to my mom, Mom, I need this right now. And she was like, well, Brian, you don't have enough tickets. I was like, but I want it. So, being the best mom ever in the world, she looked up on Google elsewhere where this portable Sega Genesis player would be. This is a while ago, so she found that there was one at Toys R Us. Remember them? Well, it happened to be just a couple miles away from that mall, so we went, and I literally begged her for it, and she got it for me. Now that portable Genesis player in question is what I have today, what I'm talking about today. It's this thing. This is the Sega Genesis Ultimate Portable Game Player. And it's a little weird. Let's go ahead and talk about the design a bit. If we go ahead and look at the buttons, it's a full 6-button layout that the newer Sega Genesis controllers would have. So it has A, B, C, X, Y, Z. So that's good. You're not going to be limited to just 3 buttons like it was back in the day. So there's that. This D-pad, it's a pretty okay D-pad, kind of small, but it has the indents at the diagonal places, so I do like that. It's not going to dig into your finger like the original NES controller. So the D-pad's not bad. These 2 buttons here are this one's very tactile, you can probably hear that. But this one, very soft. Inconsistent is the name of the game here. But from the top here, we have our very interesting AV out. So if you have a 3.5mm jack AV to AV out cable, which I will demonstrate in just a sec, you can actually display this onto your TV. Really, really nice. That has my mini USB, so that sucks. And an SD card slot at the top for loading on other Sega Genesis games that aren't on here in the collection, and a volume knob. So, and down here you have your headphone jack and the power switch. So, in terms of just overall design, I kind of like the way it looks. The white and black and gray looks pretty good. The plastic is really cheap. This feels very cheap in the hand. The only reason why it was higher in price is because it had the Sega Genesis collaboration. But the design, pretty good, honestly. But let's go ahead and turn this thing on. Power switch. At games. So this is what the screen looks like. It's pretty dim, pretty low resolution. But hey, it's playing Sega Genesis games at 480p or lower. So it doesn't have to be the greatest screen in the world, but the screen itself, the brightness, is really the main thing I have a problem with. It's not very bright. So like if you're trying to play this in direct sunlight, you can't see a thing, kind of like the good old Game Boy Advance days or regular Game Boy. So you can think of it that way, as a nostalgia trip. But it is full color. I mean, there's colors. If you're in a really dark room, it can look pretty good. Let's go ahead and just look at the menu a little bit. It looks kind of basic. You know, it has like a bubble background, a blue background, and it has the list of the games. And just listen to that sound effect. Nice, crisp. But let's go ahead and look at the game library. As you can see, there's Alex Kidd, Altered Beast. Let's turn this down a bit. Columns, Comic Zone, you got your E-SWAT, Golden Axe, Mortal Kombat 1 through 3, Ristar, I don't know how you pronounce that. You got your Sonic games, all of them except for Sonic 3, and that's probably due to legal reasons. You know, Vectorman, of course, all those good games, but if you go down to the next page, this is a bunch of like basic games, probably made by Act Games, like chess, checker, cannon, you know, kind of just really basic games you've seen before on Flash games, but now on here. So they're not the same quality as Sega Genesis games, but I mean, it's a nice to have. This is where you would get to the SD card menu, and you would just press enter, and it would just look at the files of the SD card that you have in here. Currently, I do not have one, but if you had compatible games with the BIN file, like say Sonic 3, you know, it would show up on here, and then you could play those Sega Genesis games that aren't a part of the collection that way. So actually being able to add other games to this is really cool, and I'm really glad they added it. I would put, you know, Mortal Kombat 3 Ultimate on here, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the Ultimate game, and just like the Spider-Man Sega Genesis games. It was really nice to have the option to put those games on there. But let's just go back to the menu, and let's just, let's fire up a game, shall we? Let's go ahead and go with the classic, Sonic the Hedgehog. I'll turn the volume all the way up so you can hear the sound quality. Ooh. Yeah. So it sounds terrible. The sound chip they put in here sounds like they beat it up, punched it, crunched it, mashed it, threw it in the trash, dug it out of the trash, fished it back, threw it in some water, boiled it at about 120 degrees, put it back, and put it in this thing and called it a day. The sound chip in here is really bad. It's very crunchy. The pitch isn't right, so every game you play, it's a lower pitch. And, you know, we all know Sonic has great music, especially the classic games. You can't really enjoy the music if it sounds like that, can you? Let's connect this thing to the TV. So all you have to do really here is just plug in this port into there, and then plug in your AV out into your TV. So let's go ahead and do that now. Video. Oh, wrong ones. Gotta make sure it's right. Boom, so it's there. Now let's just go ahead and just turn it on. And it shows up on the TV. Pretty nice, but as you can probably imagine from earlier, the sound quality is the same. Let's go ahead and just launch Sonic the Hedgehog once more and listen to this. Oh, brother. So there's that. And here's how it's supposed to sound. Much better. Let's just go ahead and play the game a little bit. Let's just go ahead and just get into a game. And the performance is honestly pretty good. Like, it's fast, it can keep up with the graphics of the Sonic 1. And I just got hit because I'm really bad at this game. But like, listen, if you're next to water, do you hear that? That's so bad. But you know, we're supersonic, not supersonic, but we're invincible Sonic, and we'll just go ahead and go through here. But like, in terms of performance and everything, like the way it looks good. Like, there's nothing wrong with the emulation on here. It's just the sound chip really, really ruins the experience, I think. And it's honestly unforgivable. But to go back to menu, we just press that menu, and there's that. But yeah, you can tell very minimal effort was put in this. Now, as a kid, I never really noticed the sound quality all that much. I thought that was how it was supposed to sound because who am I to know? I'm a kid. But the sound, now that I'm older and I've actually experienced it, you know, the way it's supposed to be, this is not a good way to experience these games. I'm sorry, I know it's portable, I know it's convenient, but the best way to experience these games is just sit down, pull out a Sega Genesis, power it on, play the game. So yeah, overall, this product, this device, personally, I wouldn't get it. I mean, it's a cool collector's item, you know, and it's also, you can play these games portably, but due to that sound chip, I just don't think it's worth it. But that's all for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace.